everyone, and welcome back to Not Weave Stitch. My name is Gisela, and in this week's episode we're going to be looking at how to be eco-friendly and a bit more sustainable in your fibre art journey. I'm just going to apologise before we get into it today, but my dog is just snoring and rolling around on the floor and he's being super loud today. He's very, very cute, but very, very loud. So you can probably hear him in the background, but he's staying nice and calm. So I'm not going to kick him out. I can actually record this without him constantly nudging my hand. So I'm going to keep him in the room. So if you hear any weird noises or snoring or scraping, that's literally him rolling around and stretching out on the floor next to me. And he's a big boy. He's a Great Dane mixed in with a collie. So he isn't very quiet. So yes, just ignore that as you can hear it in the background. I hope everyone's had a really nice summer so far. It's a little bit too hot for me at the moment. It's about 29-30 degrees as I'm recording this, so very, very warm. But I'm really excited to talk today about being a bit more eco-friendly and sustainable in your fibre art journey. So we're going to look at different products that you can find that are a little bit more sustainable, projects that you could potentially work on that you can maybe reuse items. So it'll be things like that. So hopefully you will find this a really interesting podcast. So the first thing I want to talk about is choosing your sustainable materials. So we'll be looking at natural fibres versus synthetic fibres. So things like wool, cotton, linen, bamboo versus things like acrylic or polyester. So I'm going to go through the pros and cons and the environmental impact. So by choosing natural fibres like cotton, wool, alpaca, linen, bamboo, hemp, silk, there are so many different options. They do have a lot of pros to them. So they are usually biodegradable. So wool, cotton and linen, they'll break down naturally in compost if they are untreated. They do have renewable resources, so, plants regrow, particularly bamboo. Bamboo is usually great because it does grow very quickly, and animals can be shorn annually. So, with your different sheep wool, that is a really good kind of more sustainable product there. They are breathable and soft, so, cotton's very good for that. So it's ideal for wearables and home decor. And with the right care, they are strong and more durable, longer lasting as well. And with wool in particular, it's naturally antibacterial and temperature regulating. So a lot of the time I really like working with like wools and cottons because they do have those pros to them. However, with everything, it does come with a few cons as well. So cotton can have a higher water usage, and you'll want to make sure that you're looking carefully at the product that you're buying, because unless it's organic, it might also have that pesticide impact as well. So you might want to think about that when you are getting your cotton. Sometimes in wool production, it can raise animal welfare concerns if it's not ethically sourced. So that's maybe something that you might want to look at where you are sourcing your wools from. So maybe look into the company, the different farms and stuff like that, and see if that's ethically sourced. Linen, hemp and bamboo are eco-friendly, but again, sometimes the processing methods can require some heavy chemicals. So again, it might be worth researching into the companies and into the factories as well. Sometimes it can be expensive. So if that's a big factor in what you're looking at in terms of products, you may want to think about that. It can be more expensive than synthetics, but usually I find it's better working with natural fibres because you've got so many of those pros. So it's really what is most important to you, but it is something to think about. And then you have your synthetic fibres, so things like acrylic, polyester and nylon. And again, these have their pros and cons. So with synthetic fibres, you're usually looking at it being a little bit more cheaper and more accessible. So like I said before, if that's a big factor, usually the synthetic fibres are cheaper. They are quite durable and machine washable as well, so that might be another factor that might be helpful for you. A lot of the time it's resistant to pests, so moths won't usually eat things like acrylic as well, so that might help with the durability. It does come in a wide range of bright, long-lasting colours as well because of that synthetic fibre, so that could be on the pro list as well there. Obviously for me, I really look closely at the cons of it, so it's usually non-biodegradable. They can take hundreds of years to break down, and linking to that, it can shed microplastics into water systems when washed. A lot of them also can be made from petroleum-based products, so again, not great for the environment, so that might be something that you need to think about. And a lot of the time the production can involve high energy and chemical use as well, so these are quite big factors to think about there. So they both have their pros and cons. It's completely up to the person and the different factors that are most important to you, but that's something to give a little think about. The next thing that I like to think about is supporting ethical and local suppliers. So I would always say the best thing is do your research. Have a little Google, have a little research, maybe there's recommendations from other people, but really think of where you are buying from. So there are a lot of benefits from buying at local yarn shops, thread shops, whatever it may be, or if you have any local artisan makers, anything like that. You also might want to think about buying from the country that you are in. So with all of these things, if you're buying locally or if you're buying online, maybe stick to the country that you're in because it's then going to reduce shipping emissions. So that's always a plus. So if you can maybe buy local, that's great. If not, look online and see if there's any in your country, and that's going to help to reduce those emissions. And particularly if it is a small business using eco-friendly production methods, that is a super plus. So again, it's really researching in your local area or online, looking at lots of different businesses, particularly smaller business, and have a look and see if they mention about being eco-friendly, what their production methods are, where they source things. The more information you can get, the more research you do, the more well equipped you're going to be able to make a really good decision. So I say research is really, really going to help. I know for myself, I really like the thread shop online because they will then show all of the different eco projects that they are funding. So it's quite good to see right front and centre on their main page on their website what they are helping. I also really like it when I look at their descriptions as well on their website because they will usually say if it's recycled, where it's from, if it's sustainable. So things like that. Those are the words that I'm looking out for, and I think it's really good when they make it as obvious as possible. So that's a really good place that I like to get some of my yarns from there. So that's the thread shop, but there's so many different small businesses, bigger businesses, all sorts of different things that you can look at. But that's what I really like seeing from these businesses, being kind of front and centre, really making it obvious what they are made of, where they're from, what they support. So linking on closely to that, like I was just saying, I like to look for the words recycled, upcycled fibre. So looking at things like using recycled cotton cord, repurposed yarn, or fabric strips for weaving and macrame can be really, really good. So in terms of when I buy items, I want to be able to see those words. I particularly like seeing recycled items. So again, it's about doing your research and looking at these different shops and having a look out for those type of products. I like to recycle just myself, so if I have any items lying around at home, maybe from a different project, or if I maybe have a scrap t-shirt that I'm no longer going to wear, I could always obviously wash it and then cut it up into strips and use it maybe in my weaving or something like that. So I also do the same with gifts. If it's been wrapped up with a lovely ribbon bow, or a bit of twine, I hoard it. I like to reuse that, so I do keep those ribbons and then I can reuse it in a different project, whether it's loom weaving, macrame weave, whatever it may be. I do like to reuse it. So that's something to potentially think about if you do have anything lying around at home, or whether you are gifted things that you can repurpose. That can be really good as well. So another thing that I wanted to think about is maybe making your own tools. So instead of buying more stuff, you can literally craft your own things at home. So I know with loom weaving, you can make your own DIY looms, literally just from cardboard, reclaimed wood, some sticks in the garden or on a walk. You can really make a simple loom out of that. So it doesn't need to be anything particularly expensive, and you can make the most amazing pieces with just a bit of cardboard. I mean, I've seen people make bags, you can make coasters. I have repurposed an old cup, so you can use like a plastic cup or one of those like foam cups, whatever they are, and you can cut into them and then you can wrap your yarn around it and basically make a woven cup. That's great for storing, I don't know, like pencils and stuff like that. So it doesn't need to be anything that you've bought. You can literally craft your own tools as well. You can use household objects as your weaving tools. So I've wrapped yarn around like a pen or a pencil before. You can make your own like bobbins, macrame holders. If you have like any hooks lying around and you've got a curtain pole, you can hook your macrame onto that as you make it. You can really think about anything you've got lying around your house that you can either reuse or that you can use to help you in your craft. So that's potentially something to think about as well. So when I'm doing a project, I like to think about waste reduction. So how can I use as much out of the product as possible? And one of my biggest things is in macrame is to try to use as much of the leftovers as possible, because with a project in macrame, you particularly want to have a little bit of excess just to be on the safe side. So I normally tell people about 10% extra cord in macrame just to be on the safe side, so you've got a bit of wiggle room with your project. But obviously you're going to trim it and you're going to have some cords left over. So in macrame, you can do different things. So particularly with the half square knot or the square knot, when I cut the cords and then I tie them on with something like a lark's head knot, I will usually pull down on the working strings a little bit longer and have the filler string shorter, so there's not so much excess. It's a little trick that I've learned. But with any excess I do have, I always say to people, don't throw it away, pop it in either like a little box or jar, container, whatever it may be. And a lot of the time you can use that leftover. So I've worked down to about 10 centimeters in size before, and it's really useful for other projects. I've used it for little Christmas decorations, little decorations and garlands. I like using smaller strips to make gathering knots as well. So try to reuse it. If it's a really, really tiny piece, maybe you could use it as like a stuffing or something like that. That might be quite a good idea. You can just have any of those tiny leftovers, use it, put it in some stuffing for, I don't know, if you've got something like a crochet or knitted piece, that might be helpful there. So really think about how you can effectively use any excess that you may have. So other ideas, any yarn scraps or offcuts, you could make mini pom-poms, tassels, embroidery, like I said, stuffing, things like that. So try to think in your project, what is the best way to use the excess that I have left over? And I'm trying to get better at that, particularly with my macrame. That's the biggest one that I see wasting, but I tend to now just have a little jar where I save all of my scrap pieces, and if I know I need a really tiny piece, instead of cutting it off a big length, I will just jump to that jar, have a little look, and there's usually something in there that I can use. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about is mending and extending the life of your handmade items. So things like visible mending techniques, they're really in at the moment and they look stunning. So if you have a fibre item or, I don't know, t-shirt, jeans, anything like that that you can potentially repair with a visible mending technique, that can be really helpful. So if you're good at embroidery, sewing, these are great ways to really upcycle your clothes, do some visible mending because they look absolutely fantastic. I love the porthole technique. I think that looks gorgeous. So there are all sorts of different techniques that you can use to repair your items in a really fashionable way. You could reinforce weak spots in any woven or knitted projects. I know for me with needle felting, you can use that roving wool to cover up any tiny little holes if it's slightly moth-eaten. Let's say if you've got like a blanket or a scarf that's a bit moth-eaten, you can use needle felting to cover that up and make really nice little decorative patches on it in different shapes or whatever it may be. So there's ways to basically repurpose it, jazz it up a little bit if it's got any holes in it. So I really, really like seeing a lot of mending and extending the life of any handmade items or even just your clothes in your wardrobe. It's a really good way to put your fibre art skills to the test there. And it just gives it a new lease of life as well. So I really like to see that. If you have any other ways that you like to recycle, upcycle, if you've got any good techniques for stopping so much waste, please do let me know in the comments. I'm always really looking to improve and be a little bit more sustainable with my craft. So let's try and help each other. If you know of a really good business, particularly if it's a small business, again, let me know in the comments there because I really want to be able to support more of these eco-friendly, smaller businesses. So let's help each other out. Pop it in the comments there and I would love to see your recommendations. So hopefully you found this episode really useful. Like I said before, it's all in the research. Do as much research as you can. Have a look around at different businesses. Have a look into what they are saying in terms of where the production is, what they do in the production. Is it from recycled materials? Do they fund any eco-friendly projects? All sorts of things like this. So do as much research as you can and that will definitely help being a little bit more eco-friendly and sustainable. But in next week's episode, it is going to be the final episode of this season. I cannot believe we're up to the 12th episode. This is amazing. I really, really hope that you've been enjoying the podcast so far. I do have some big plans coming up for season 2. So join me in the next and last episode of the season to find out more to come from Not Weave Stitch. So as ever, if you could give me a follow, it really does make the world of difference to me. It does really help the algorithms. So I would really appreciate any follows. And I do thank you so much for listening to any of these episodes. It really does mean the world to me. As well, if you could take a look at my Patreon, that would be amazing. It does help to support me being able to continue with this podcast. And we do have different tiered memberships with different rewards in them as well. So take a little look at Not Weave Stitch on my Patreon as well. So as ever, thank you so much for joining me and I will see you in the next one.